all the silly little animals sleeping by the side of the road, or how I learned to bemusedly deal with these strange and lovely dystopian times without you, A.K.A. the tragedy of my rival self-published novelist. Brought to you by December 5th Productions. Chapter 6. Garments of Disgrace. Amidst my hysterical crying, I received a phone call from my dear friend Demetrius. The two of us were in the same kindergarten class. We stood next to each other on the risers on the stage at our own annual Deptford Elementary School holiday performance. That year, my grandmother played the pan flute arrangement. She transposed the melody from my father's tribal hymn. It was a symbol of my grandmother's acceptance of my father. In honor of my father's tribal heritage, I wore one of his tribal garments. Demetrius and I tripped on the hem of my father's tribal garments multiple times throughout the performance. Next year, when I wore my father's tribal garments, I was shoved into a locker. I didn't see who did it. I bounced off the lockers and couldn't catch a glimpse of the person who shoved me. It was my understanding that the individual who pushed me didn't understand. Wearing my father's tribal garments was a way to honor my father's heritage. I didn't mean to cause any discomfort. The next day, it happened again. I was shoved into the lockers. The day after that, it happened again. I wore my father's tribal garments for rehearsal that whole week, and I was shoved into the lockers each day. I didn't know who I could tell about this occurrence. I was embarrassed. I couldn't tell my younger brothers. I was meant to be a sturdy role model. To them, I was meant to be thought of as someone who never had any difficulties in school. It would certainly destroy them if they found out. Besides, there was already enough going on at home, since this was right around the time that Adalberto's preschool music teacher dropped a xylophone over his head, allegedly accidentally, which effectively altered his brain chemistry so that he was, well, off, generally speaking. I decided to confide in Demetrius, who was known as the strongest student in the entire school. That day, I went up to him in the cafeteria. I asked Demetrius if I could sit next to him. Luckily, no one ever sat next to Demetrius in the cafeteria. Even as a first grader, Demetrius was taller and more athletically pronounced than most high schoolers. His pectorals had a boulder-like appearance. His arms looked as though they were made up of mounds of rocks. He seemed to inherit these features genetically. As a child, I wasn't tall enough to see what Demetrius's parents' faces looked like. Ironically, if someone were to bump into Demetrius in the hallway, it would feel as though they were shoved into a locker. With that said, he was very quiet at school. With his mouth closed, Demetrius nodded. He chewed a piece of plain bread. He had a sandwich bag with a piece of plain bread. I sat down. I introduced myself to him. I pronounced my name to the best of my ability. He said, "Nice. My name is Demetrius." He turned his sandwich bag inside out and tried to lick some of the leftover crumbs of the piece of bread he packed. "Oh, are you hungry?" I asked. He didn't answer this question. He looked up from his crinkled sandwich bag. "Well, the reason I ask is because my mother actually packed me an extra sandwich. She always packs me an extra sandwich." I slid the extra sandwich on the table towards Demetrius. He slowly unzipped the sandwich bag I gave him. In a cautious way, he pulled out the sandwich bag. He scarfed down the whole thing in seconds. "Now, Demetrius," I said, "I want to speak to you about something I can't bring to anyone else." Demetrius looked back at me and nodded. I held back tears. The past few days, I had been shoved into the lockers because I wore my father's tribal garments. Demetrius nodded. He paused for a second and looked around the cafeteria. A teacher who supervised the students during lunch briefly glanced at the two of us as we chatted with a colleague. "All right, I'll take care of that." I felt a blurry sensation build up in my eyes. I nodded. "Here's what I want you to do," Demetrius said. "I will keep an eye out for you when you pass by the lockers again. Let them do it one more time, and leave the rest to me." "All right," I said. The two of us shook hands and sat there together the rest of lunch. On the way back from the cafeteria, I headed to my classroom. Demetrius followed from a distance. Yet again, I was shoved into a locker. I was blindsided. I couldn't get a glimpse of who it was. I felt the impact of the collision. I heard the clang of the locker door. I slid down the face of the locker door. I felt the emotional pang of the attack. Demetrius witnessed the whole ordeal. He stepped up to the person who shoved me. Neither of them exchanged any words. Demetrius stood there and stared at the person. While I sat there on the floor, I noticed the two pairs of shoes. One of the pairs of shoes was well kept, and the other had tattered laces and patches of duct tape along the sole of the shoes. Above the shoes, with tattered laces and duct tape, were frayed jean hems. You could practically see most of the ankle, as it was completely sockless. Later on, I found out that the clothes Demetrius wore were his father's old worn-out hand-me-downs. The person who shoved me was tall and large as well. From where I sat, I couldn't see either of their faces. I stared at both of their shoes and listened to the traffic of students on their way to class. Eventually, the person who shoved me went away. Demetrius gave me his hand and seamlessly lifted me up to my feet. I dusted off my father's tribal garments. Demetrius nodded. I nodded back at him. Since then, Demetrius accompanied me to lunch and extracurricular activities. We walked through the hallways together. He checked our surroundings. The two of us didn't talk to each other much at first. At lunch, I continued to give Demetrius my extra sandwich. After school, he took my bus to make sure I got off home safe. He got off at my stop and walked back to his home. I didn't know where Demetrius's home was. I found out later that his house is 4 miles away. Soon, a few peers asked me why I always walked around with Demetrius. I said that the two of us were friends. As I said this, I realized the two of us were friends, and yet I didn't know much about Demetrius, and Demetrius didn't know much about me, aside from my father's tribal heritage, which was a very surface-level detail. That evening, I invited Demetrius over to my house. I figured it would be an opportunity to get to know my new friend Demetrius. The two of us hopped off the bus, got off at my stop, and I brought him into our house. At the door, Harold and Francis paced up to him. Demetrius was amused. "What are these?" he asked. "Well, that is Francis. He is tanner than Harold. And that is Harold. He's younger and more rambunctious." Harold heard his name and leapt at Demetrius. "Oh, hey, Harold, don't jump on our guest. That's not a very polite greeting." "I like these things," Demetrius said. "So, what are Harold and Francis?" "I believe they are the Australian Shepherd breed. I believe that's why they have blue eyes." "All right. What is the Australian Shepherd breed?" "Well, they are dogs. Have you ever seen a dog before, Demetrius?" "No, I haven't. I didn't know what dogs were before I met these two." "Ah, got it," I said. Demetrius and I hung up our jackets on the chairs of the kitchen table. I heard footsteps along the stairs. It was my father. My father stepped out of his room of worship to meet Demetrius. Even as a first grader, Demetrius was taller than my father. My father bent his head all the way back to look at Demetrius. Demetrius said, "Hi, Mr. I'm Demetrius." In response, my father nodded in approval and went back to his room of worship. I showed him around our house. I showed him all the snacks we had in the pantry. I told him that he could help himself to anything in the fridge. My parents always made an abundance of food, in case any of us didn't like one of the particular dishes. I took him upstairs. I showed him where Adalberto's room was. Adalberto pushed a train on the rug. He struggled to push the train the right way. He smirked at the strangeness of it. I stepped in for a second. "Adalberto," I said, "I believe it might be easier to play with the train if you flip it this way and push it around on its wheels, instead of the top part. It looks as though you were actually pushing it upside down." "Oh," he said, "that makes sense." "Well, I believe you mean that makes sense, Adalberto, though close enough. Also, Adalberto, this is my friend Demetrius." I turned to Demetrius and said, "Demetrius, this is my littlest brother, Adalberto." "Hi," Adalberto said. "Hi, Adalberto," Demetrius said. "Here, Demetrius, let's give Adalberto a break now. We don't want to overwhelm him." In the hallway, we passed by Gisaldo. He had a pair of binoculars hung from a cord around his neck. I said, "Hi, Gisaldo. This is Demetrius." "Demetrius, this is Gisaldo." "Hi, Gisaldo," Demetrius said. "Hi, yes, it is good to meet you. I am in the middle of some recon. I will touch base with you two after." "Nice. Can Demetrius and I partake in the recon with you?" "Highly unlikely, though maybe the three of us can partake in lower level of recon later. I can fit it in my schedule. We'll see." "Alright," I said. "Now disperse. I can't let any of you know about my whereabouts." Gisaldo stood there and waited for us to go elsewhere. As we went down the hallway, I heard the audio recording of the pan flute arrangement. This meant my little sister, Anastasia, was asleep. I whispered to Demetrius, "Here, we have to use quiet voices when we go into this room." I tiptoed to the doorway and peered inside. There she was. She was swaddled in her crib. Our kitten Wooly slept with his little chin positioned on the bottom of Anastasia's blanket, right by her feet. Luckily, even as a young kitten, Wooly was exceptionally fluffy, so he kept little Anastasia warm. He looked as though he were a little gray cat-shaped puff of cloud. He would drift around the house as the little puff of gray cloud he was and plop down and sit around for hours. He followed Anastasia wherever she went, ever since she was a little infant. Shortly after Anastasia was born, one of the foreign laborers who tended to our chicken coop wanted to express her gratitude for her employment. So the foreign laborer brought over a little box with a pink bow-tied ribbon on it. She knocked on the door to our house, and without saying anything, she handed it to my mother. Gisaldo, Adalberto, and I all stared at the little box as our mother placed it on the kitchen table. The foreign laborer waited by the doorway and smiled at my mother. Moments later, the little box slid to the side, all on its own. Gisaldo, Adalberto, and I were all intrigued. We never saw an inanimate object move all on its own before. Gisaldo lurched back and said, "Whoa, what is that? What's inside that package, Mother?" Before our mother could answer, out crawled little Wooly. He pushed the lid of the little box away. He tiptoed towards the pot of flowers on the table and brushed his cheek against the petals. At this, Adalberto said, "Cat. It's a cat kitten. It's a kitten cat." Our mother said, "Yes, that is a kitten, Adalberto, and when the kitten grows up, it becomes a cat. It's of the feline genus," I blurted out. Perhaps I heard a similar line from a textbook my mother read to me as an infant. Adalberto said, "Cat? Tin?" "Kitten," our mother said, in her happy kindergarten teacher tone. "Kitten," Adalberto said. Our mother nodded. The foreign laborer watched in amusement. Completely blindsided, our mother had no idea what to say to the foreign laborer, so she took the little kitten in her hands and nodded her head and smiled. When our father came downstairs, he did the same. He nodded his head and smiled. Our mother didn't speak the same language as the foreign laborer. The foreign laborer was hired through a third-party contractor. None of us knew what the foreign laborer's language was. Later that year, the chickens were gradually rampaged by surrounding wildlife. Immediately, Wooly became a monumental part of our family unit. Since we took him in, Anastasia was quite young, and Wooly must have thought Anastasia was his own. So, the two of them grew up together. He hopped in her crib while she slept. He played with her baby toys. He followed her when she started to crawl and walk. At first, he was a tiny little kitten, though he grew rapidly. Soon, he measured up to Harold and Francis's knees in height, and was as long as they were. When he walked around, you instantly noted his presence. He had a dominant and commanding demeanor. He didn't flinch when dogs energetically approached him. He caught mice. He caught many birds. With his fluffiness, you wouldn't expect him to be such a killer. The pan flute arrangement played softly from a speaker by our crib. I cautiously stepped into the room. My mother explained to us that Anastasia's nap time was her most valuable time to learn the pan flute. I turned my head at Demetrius and waved at him to quietly enter the room to take a peek at her. Demetrius stepped inside. He looked over his head to check behind him. He walked up towards me. Quietly, I said, "Look, Demetrius. That's my little sister." At this, Demetrius flinched. With soft steps, he quickly ducked out of the room. He went down the hallway and all the way down the stairs. I followed Demetrius. Downstairs, the back porch door was open. The dogs ran outside. Francis and Harold raced along the stone wall perimeter and barked loudly. I walked outside and closed the door behind me. Demetrius sat on the bench by our pond. I went over and sat next to him. He sat there and looked at the pond. "Demetrius, is everything all right? Are you allergic to cats? Did you get scratched by a cat one time?" "I did myself. It's okay, though. My cat Wooly said sorry. It was him trying to play with me." Demetrius watched the dogs run around in our backyard. He laced and unlaced his fingers. After some time, he asked, "Is your sister safe?" "Yes, of course, Demetrius. She had all her immunizations. What I mean to ask is, are you able to handle your sister when she becomes violent?" "Violent? You see, I'm not sure I understand that question. Generally speaking, my sister doesn't become violent. She sometimes cries when she wakes up. She gets confused when my mother tries to teach her the pan flute. Aside from that, Anastasia isn't much of a threat." "Really?" Demetrius asked. He turned towards me. "Can I ask you this, Demetrius? Do you notice any peculiar behavior with your sister?" Demetrius bowed his head down. He turned away. "My sister terrorizes me," he said. I nodded. "I see," I said. "Well, I'm sorry to hear about that. I assure you, Anastasia won't hurt you at all. She is too little to do anything." That's what I thought with my little sister. As she got older, she grew very tall and strong. She became violent. She goes around the house breaking things. She rips the cabinets off the hinges. She punches through walls and doors. Out of nowhere, she attacks me. She hits me a lot. I try to dodge, and she still gets me. My parents don't understand why she is like this. The doctors believe it's something in her head. The doctors say it's all mental. I don't really understand. The doctor said she doesn't even want to be violent. My parents are afraid of her. I try to stay away from her. At night, I sneak up into the attic of our house and sleep there in a laundry sack. I truly felt for Demetrius. I was so fond of my family, and his family was an absolute disgrace. Well, Demetrius, that's a lot to handle. I paused. Demetrius nodded his head. I thought to myself, well, Demetrius, if you want, maybe you can come over to my house more often, where your sister won't hurt you. My sister doesn't have anything metal. She won't hurt you. You can come over here and stay safe. Demetrius sniffled. A few moments passed. Harold and Francis trotted towards us. Really? He asked. Yes, really, I said. As we sat there, Harold and Francis rushed up to us. Francis nudged Demetrius's hand with his chin, and Harold jumped on the bench between us. Look, I said. Everyone likes you here. Come on, let's go inside. Demetrius smirked. The two of us went inside the house. Harold and Francis trailed along next to us. Inside, we passed by Adalberto's room. He sat on the floor and pushed his tray in the correct way. He turned towards the doorway as we passed by and said, Hi, Dimitri. He paused, and he said, S. Good job, Adalberto, I said. That is correct. This is my friend, Demetrius. We passed Anastasia's room again. My mother was inside. She adjusted the audio recording of the pan flute arrangement. While she did, she turned towards Demetrius and I. She put her finger perpendicular to our lips to signal quiet. We continued down the hallway. We heard a series of abnormal noises coming from the ceiling. Demetrius turned towards me and said, Who's in the attic? We don't have an attic. Actually, you do have an attic. Really? I asked. Yes. Here, I can find it. Someone is up there. Quietly, Demetrius and I searched each room in our house. Demetrius attentively listened to the sounds resonating from above. At the end of the hallway, right by my room, Demetrius said, Look, up there. I looked up. There was a shelf along the wall with towels and sheets and blankets and comforters. Demetrius, I don't see anything. Up there, he said. Do you see that towel? It's not tucked in as neat on the shelf as others. Well, yes, sure. Does that mean anything? Watch this, Demetrius said. Demetrius cautiously climbed up the shelf, as if it were a ladder. He pushed the towel close to the wall and adjusted the fold so it looked neater. A slim crevice was revealed between the top part of the shelf on the wall and the ceiling. He turned towards me and pointed it out to me. Interesting, I said. I haven't noticed that before. He slipped his fingers into the crevice. He pushed the side of the crevice closest to the ceiling behind him. It appeared to be a type of panel that shielded an entrance. The panel slid back enough to reveal an opening. Demetrius turned towards me and said, "Follow me." He lifted himself up through the opening in the ceiling. I climbed up the shelf after him. I accidentally pushed a few blankets off the shelf. I arrived right behind Demetrius. As I stood up in the attic, I saw Gisaldo had Demetrius's face pressed against the floor of the attic, and his arms held stretched all the way back. "Whoa, what's going on, Gisaldo? How much do you know about this kid right here? Demetrius is a friend from school. Are you sure he is not a threat? Did you background check him? He could be posing as a first grader so as to infiltrate my operation." "I don't believe so, Gisaldo." "Well, how is he able to find the entrance to our attic? No one is supposed to know. Are you telling me that you created this spot in secret from the entire family?" "Yes, I made it so I could master my tactical defense skills." I looked around the attic. An abundance of athletic gear covered the floor. There was a treadmill. There were dumbbells. There was a bench press. There were boxing bags hung in triangular formation. I was surprised the attic could support the weight of everything in there. "Well, I will make sure to keep this quiet, Gisaldo." "That's a complete given," Gisaldo said. "More importantly, I want to know how this kid found me here." Gisaldo pulled tighter on Demetrius's arms. Demetrius groaned. Demetrius said, "I knew where you were because I know my attics." "And how do you know attics?" "I sleep in an attic." "And why do you do that?" "Because of my sister. She's dangerous." Gisaldo's eyes lit up. "How dangerous?" Gisaldo asked. "More dangerous than you," Demetrius said. Gisaldo eased up on Demetrius's arms. His face brightened. "All right, well, we'll talk shop, kid." "All right," Demetrius said. Gisaldo let go of Demetrius. Demetrius stood up. Gisaldo said, "In exchange for more intel, you can use our attic. Look over there in the corner. There's a nice cot over there. I'll show you an exterior entrance to this place so you can stay here without anyone's knowledge." Gisaldo held out his hand. Demetrius shook it. Ever since that day, Demetrius stayed in our attic. It was nicer than his own attic. He told me how his attic was narrow and covered in dusty vents. Mice ran around by his toes as he slept on the attic floor in a laundry sack. This is a major upgrade. He quickly became a part of our family, even though our parents weren't aware of the fact he lived with us. He enjoyed my little brothers very much. He made sure to keep an eye on Adalberto. He told Adalberto and Gisaldo that if they ever needed anything, he could take care of it. The way Demetrius said this, he insinuated that he could help with exceedingly difficult problems. However, for Adalberto, simple problems were difficult problems for him. So, Adalberto asked Demetrius to help him tie his shoes. He asked Demetrius to help him with his blocks. He didn't really understand the connotation of Demetrius's offer. Yet, still, Demetrius helped Adalberto tie his shoes and play with his blocks. Alongside, Demetrius and Gisaldo became close. The two of them sparred every day in the attic. The attic became Demetrius's room. He even got along with Anastasia. He quietly tiptoed into Anastasia's room to check in on her, and he restarted the audio recording of the pamphlet arrangement. It was difficult for him to get over his fear of little sisters, though, soon, he grew accustomed to Anastasia. For once in his life, he was exposed to a sister who wouldn't violently assault him. So, here, let me take it from the top. Demetrius called me while I hung on an emotional thread. We reminisced all the good times we had together. He explained that he was out of college and he was back in the area. That Saturday, we fished by the reservoir off an unmarked trail. We arrived early in the morning. "So, how are you feeling?" "Like death," I said. "I honestly feel like death. You know, the whole idea of it. If the whole idea of death was a feeling, that would be precisely how I am currently feeling." I've been there before, Demetrius said. I mentioned to him, offhandedly, how I recently drove upstate in an effort to win back my ex-girlfriend, Ella Opalton, and failed. That was the main reason why I felt like death. Demetrius told me things as well. Things got crazy down there, he said. At college, you know. It got to the point where there wasn't any food at the grocery stores. You know how it is at grocery stores. All the shelves were empty. People were preparing for something. And what were they preparing for at the time? People expected a food shortage, so they bought in bulk. The aisles turned to graveyards. The aisles smelled the way funerals smelled. Due to the massive purchases of food, there was a food shortage. People started to camp out in the parking lots and loot the shipping trucks. That sounds reasonable. One time, someone stole a truck, a whole 18-wheeler. They swung the truck around in the parking lot. They drove off with it. A bunch of people were still on the platform. Some of them fell off. Some held on. As the driver pulled out onto the main road, they were shot through the windshield. Oh, really now? And who do you suspect took the shot? I don't know. Some unknown sniper, I assume. Or probably a vigilante. The truck flipped over in the middle of the road. Cars swerved into the truck and piled up all over the intersection. The people in the back of the truck got up, took what they could carry, and limped away. And what do you suppose caused this event to arise? I don't know. A lot of people think the whole thing was a setup. People think the grocery store workers and minimum wage workers will rise up and pressure the higher-ups. Say they will quit if they don't get more pay. If they do, people think there won't be anyone working at the grocery stores, in turn eliminating a food resource. That's one factor as to why alpacas are so in season right now. And would you suppose this theory is valid? It will never happen. Our world has plenty of food resources. We just throw out all the unpaid-for food. Plus, too many people could replace any revolting minimum wage workers out of desperation. It's a losing battle for them. When those workers realize they will be replaced, they will accept the situation for what it is. If anything, they will get a lower pay as a result. It's the idea of a potential revolt that shifts things around. It's the pure anticipation of the possibility of an economic collapse that causes this dilemma. It's a sign of the decadence of our generation. People think they're entitled to more and need to work less. Most people don't know how to defend themselves if need be. The average person has never intentionally killed anyone before. That's about to change. That's what happens. History says it all. We start to grow weak. Then something happens. And we need to step it up. Get tougher out there. Get it together. Think about how people were at times of wars, natural disasters, and plagues. They weren't zonked out watching television. People kept their chin up and pushed through it. Yes, paying minimum wage is great for the economy as well. Think about it. It's genius. Low pay incentivizes people to pick up more hours to make ends meet. Their life becomes work. The minimum wage employee lives more at their job than anywhere else in their life. It's the ultimate tactic for controlling the population. Later on, I confidently told him about the mishap that happened while I studied abroad in Stockholm. It took quite some time to tell the whole story. Then, Demetrius told me about one of our peers from our school. Yeah. Have you heard about Lionel Mandrake, though? I think he was in your homeroom. No, I can't say I have. Yes, he was in my homeroom. That part I know for sure. The guy went to college in Florida for swimming, right? The guy was on top of his game. He shredded through the water. He was pulled out of college early to serve as a special intelligence agent. While in the field, he was exposed to an illicit substance which fried his brain. As of now, the guy's mute. He can only communicate via text message or by typing stuff onto a keyboard. Are you saying he can't talk? If he tries to talk, it comes out as a word salad. You know, random words in the wrong order, such as kindergarten, happy, movie, penguins. None of it makes any sense. His handwriting doesn't come out the right way when he tries to jot a message down. On the bright side, he met a nice woman beforehand, and the two recently became engaged. Well, that's nice. She lives in Florida. She works as a lawyer. She is investigating the situation because no one knows how Lionel was exposed. He has no memory of how it occurred. It could have been from someone he ran into in the field, though some believe that it was an inside job. Maybe he knew too much about the state of our nation. Interesting. Isn't Lionel around our age? Yep, he's 23. 23, I said. The two of us said nothing for a full hour. Finally, I talked to him about my writing. Demetrius was one of the few people who read my novels before I self-published them. You know what I believe, Demetrius? There doesn't actually need to be a plot in a novel. There only needs to be a plot if someone is going to die, or if the reader needs to feel the anxiety of an approaching death or massacre. Only in that way should there be a plot. Demetrius murmured, After all, nothing matters in life anyway. That's all semantics. In some of my novels, the narrator or main character would be killed off in the first scene, sometimes even the first page. This gives a more realistic feel. Death tends to feel random in terms of timing. I believe that if a reader sees a clear structure and feels that there is an author writing the novel, the element of fiction is ruined. The author should have nothing to do with the whole thing. Plotting is only for killing or murdering. Demetrius nodded. I feel confident with this theory. After all, I'm a very successful self-published novelist. Demetrius nodded again. Soon, our conversation moved on to new territory. It was the part of our meetups where Demetrius requested me to give pointers on courting a romantic interest. He cleared his throat. Say, do you think it's a good idea to try to be a stable person who is resourceful and who can provide a secure structure for a romantic interest at times when they feel overwhelmed with things? He shifted his head towards the trail behind us. He fidgeted around with something in his interior jacket pocket. Demetrius discreetly took out a pen and notepad. I gave him my brutally honest answer on the subject. I wanted to assist my friends and acquaintances in any way I could. Generally speaking, I didn't find one gender more attractive than the other. I went for whatever I found attractive at that instant. With that said, I believe this made me even more resourceful to Demetrius. Not at all, I said. Really? Then what is the proper protocol for pursuing an intriguing individual? Well, the majority do not like stability or comfort whatsoever. People enjoy stressful situations. It's exciting. People like when quarters make things complicated for no reason whatsoever. People find you more attractive if you are a total wild card. It's more compelling when you are unpredictable and when you have absolutely no idea what you are doing. It's the behavior of constantly switching gears, instantly and spontaneously, without thinking logically whatsoever, which will make yourself a more intriguing individual. All right, Demetrius said. He jotted down what I said. In fact, the best tactic is to constantly appear on edge, exude the idea that the concept of tomorrow is a massive question mark, enforce the idea that danger lurks around the corner. Always act as though someone is tracking your movements. Someone is going to kill you. They are waiting for the second you check over your shoulder to pull the trigger. This defines time constraints. Naturally, you will be lethally irresistible to potential partners. I'll give an example. I didn't understand everything that happened in Stockholm, although it worked to my advantage. The violence, the exponentially increasing death toll, the military encounters, and the underground militias all established stress and sexual frustration. This worked as an aphrodisiac. People saw me as something that could disappear at any instant. They clung on to me, passionately, to relieve their own anxiety over their own demise. Honestly, the only other way to intrigue a romantic interest in such a fashion is to become a ridiculously successful self-published novelist like myself. However, the issue with that is if you don't maintain a low profile, you will have an abundance of suitors constantly careering over to you and mauling you with affection. We walked back to our cars. The terrain grew steeper. We neared a part of the woods where the trees were spaced out. I looked over the shoulder of the trail. I could see the entire reservoir. With the sun winding down, the entire water looked as though it were glass. Demetrius kicked the leaves as we walked along to eliminate our tracks. Before we separated onto different trails, Demetrius asked if I wanted to run off with him. "Think about it," he said. "Something's bound to happen soon. We could fend for ourselves. We wouldn't need anything or anyone else. We could live off the land, catch our own food, protect ourselves from any threat. I know you have my back." I thought about Demetrius's proposition. I considered it. I thought it would be a suitable situation for me to run off impulsively. Other people did it. There were many people my age in nomadic groups who no longer had names to call themselves. Why shouldn't I follow the herd? Demetrius bowed his head. "That's fair enough," I said. "I'll think it over." I stopped on the trail and thought about it. I told him I couldn't run off because of Anastasia. "I have to keep her safe." Demetrius nodded. I understood it was difficult for Demetrius due to his relationship with his sister. A tiny shred of my mind also thought about the possibility that Demetrius found me compelling as a romantic interest, though he told me over and over again that was not the case. "That's reasonable," he said. "By the way, if you ever need anything, let me know. I won't be far." Weeks later, I thought back to what Demetrius said. He stopped living in our attic when he attended college, so when he was not on campus, I was unsure as to where he lived. I checked our attic, and he was never there. Sometimes certain gear was set up in different positions, though it was my understanding that no one used the space for some time, since my brothers and Demetrius were away at school. I forgot to ask what Demetrius's living arrangements were when I met him that day. It perplexed me when Demetrius said that he wouldn't be far. However, the moment went over my head. He smirked, and he looked sweaty and happy. Then, he strode off into the forest in the dark. Chapter 7. How I was made aware that my days were to be the last of my days. I walked back to the side of the road where I parked my car. I opened the passenger side door because my driver's side door didn't have a door handle. As I placed my fishing gear inside, I heard a crunch of fallen branches nearby. I turned in that direction. A figure stepped out of the woods. The figure was hooded. I understood that, someday, someone would finally track me down, though I had that expectation that I would have more time. I hoped to live until Anastasia's 13th birthday. Yesterday, I sobbed my eyes out, and I wanted nothing from the world, and after I acknowledged that my life was on the line, I wanted to live. The hooded figure walked towards me with phenomenal posture. The figure's toes pointed directly towards me. Before the figure unveiled themselves, I knew it was certainly my rival self-published novelist. It is I, Engram Latavius. Yes, that is what they call me. This is a fake name. As a successful self-published novelist, you never went by your real name. No one knew a self-published novelist's real name. All of us used aliases. So you have read my recent novel. What did you think? You are a true competitor. Why, thank you. Though, I am superior. Sounds as though much of your recognition has gone to your head. I remember my first 7-figure royalty check. I don't measure my success in checks. I believe the literary honor will be bought with blood, and not with gold. I'll base our caliber by whoever is the last one standing. So, have you come here to have another go at me? I slid my sleeve up my arm to show him the wound along my wrist. You healed. On the outside, I said. I paused for a beat. Though you write differently now, correct? Excuse me? Your recent fiction rose to a new level after your literary abilities were threatened. You write differently when you understand that this novel could be your last. I found myself nodding in agreement. This brings me to the reason I am here. I have come here to deliver a message. And whom might that message be from? It is from I, Engram Latavius, He handed me a scroll, bound by a lace and melted wax, seal-pressed into the center. Perhaps you could tell me the message, as we are now face to face, and you came all this way. I thought this could knock him off his conversational footing. You know as well as I do the effect of the written word. Indeed I do. This was the usual way self-published novelists contacted each other at the time. It was either that, or they would threaten you directly upon the pages of their novel, as both of us did beforehand. I came here to deliver my declaration, my formal promise to take care of you once and for all. Very well then. And what kind of death do I have in store? Death by the pen, of course. Of course, I said. I nodded solemnly. He bowed with his arms spread out behind his back, as though to imitate a medieval, courteous gesture. Well, it has been a pleasure, though I must go. Next time I see you will certainly be the last. At this, he strode off into the forest ahead. Chapter 8. I am going to kill you. It's only a matter of time. Dear, yes, I know your real name, and I know it well. I know you sometimes go by other names, such as Morley or Marley, though I know who you really are. You really are a scurvy fellow. Yet I recognize that there is proper etiquette in our game. It is only polite to inform the enemy of their approaching death, so they can make arrangements. Perhaps the inevitability of your demise will make you look differently at the world. Surely you will consciously breathe each breath. You will feel your pulse as something you hadn't truly registered in quite some time. You will note how immaterial the materials are around you. You will miss those you care for ahead of time. Observe them through your new lens. Notice how monumental their lives are through your dying eyes. As much as you can, please understand that this is a matter of respect. I will not kill you as a rogue or villain. Whatever lies above will have mercy on my soul, as I have promised to carry out this task with honor. I vow to succeed you with unstoppable tenacity. What you read of mine so far is nothing compared to the material I am about to release. I promise you that it will be I, Ingram Latavius, who will set the new literary marks. It is I who will take your throne. I declare that it shall be I who will kill you at the optimal moment. Your fate is already sealed. It will only be a matter of time. Of course, if you have to know, I believe it is only fair that you experience death by the pen. It will be with this pen, actually. It will be this pen I am writing with this instant. Perhaps you can smell the ink on the page, so when your time comes, death will have a familiar scent. Sincerely, your sworn enemy and fiercest rival, E.L.